Hello and welcome back to the Property Pilot. Today we're going to be talking about how to work out where to buy property. Okay, so welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about how you actually work out what type of property and where you can purchase properties. Now this depends on what strategy you're undertaking, and I'm going to give 3 basic examples of strategy and then answer the question in terms of where to actually buy. So first of all, we're going to talk about income strategy, where we invest in property to give us an income and to deliver monthly cash flow. Now, of course, it naturally follows that you should buy in areas that have a high yield, because the higher the yield, typically speaking, the higher the income is going to be and the more cash you're going to be pocketing on a monthly basis. So you want to be looking at properties that have a high yield. Now, what actually is that figure? Well, it's very difficult to say, because now that rates have changed so drastically, I'm recording this in November 2022, what used to be a good rate, a few months ago is now actually not so much a good rate today. So for example, I was buying at 8% yield last year, but today if I'm buying at 8% yield, I can't hit my numbers. I've got to get the 10% plus. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is also your target. You may be able to operate in different manners, but that's personally what I look for on standard buy-to-lets. Now, with income, we've talked about yield. Now, there'll be certain areas in the UK where you will get a higher yield. So generally speaking, in the north of the UK, you'll get a higher yield than you will do in the south. So for example, if you're looking at somewhere near to where I am in Leeds, it's quite nice actually, because you get a quite nice blend between yield and capital appreciation. But if I go a slightly bit further afield to where I have properties in Halifax, well, you can get a pretty nice high yield in Halifax. That will really help you if you actually want to get into income investing and actually undertaking an income strategy to generate monthly cash flow for your property business. Now, there are pros and cons to this, and I'll come on to this slightly shortly. If income investing is suited to you and what you want from your lifestyle, then you want to be investing in high yield areas. Look at areas in the north, and typically speaking, those properties they could be single buy to let. Maybe it's a back to back, a 1 or 2 bed back to back. But also on the other end, it could be a HMO, a house of multiple occupancy, and these typically have higher yield. If income is really what you're going for, consider purchasing a HMO. Now, HMOs are great because you've got a higher yield, you make more money, and it's great for those who want to maximize their cash and deploy their cash as effectively as possible to generate that income. Now, again, there are pros and cons to this. HMOs are great because they typically pay you more money, but the con is the hassle and the additional time to actually manage a HMO. Another thing that's really important where working out where to buy for income investing is rental demand. You need to buy in areas that have a strong rental demand, a really strong rental demand, because your income relies on renting the property not only at a good rent, but also in an area with high demand, so you don't have unnecessarily large void periods. So again, there's different ways how we can check this out. Just head to Rightmove, type in an area where you're thinking of purchasing this property to let, and if you're actually putting yourself in the tenant's shoes, let's look on the to rent section. And if there's nothing there within a quarter or half mile radius, that sometimes suggests that there's a very high rental demand, because properties come up and they're snapped up really quickly. But let's flip this on the other side. Let's say you're looking at an area, and in fact there's 20 listings or even more, maybe there's 40 listings that pop up within a quarter mile radius of your desired postcode. Well, that may tell you that actually the demand isn't that great and there's an oversupply of that type of rental in that area. So again, check Rightmove as a good area for rental demand, because you need to be buying in areas of strong rental demand for this strategy to really work well. So the second strategy, investing in property for capital growth and investing for a legacy, something that you can pass down to your children. Well, we want to be looking in slightly different areas to those that we've just spoken about. If we are not so bothered about the monthly cash flow, but we're really bothered about the value of these properties over time and building that legacy, again, we need to be focusing on different areas. We need really strong fundamentals, and what I mean by fundamentals are things like, are there good schools nearby? What's the crime rate like? What's the employment like in that area? Are there good transport links? What percentage of people own homes in those areas? And these are all really important questions, really important fundamentals that we need positive answers to, because typically speaking, if you can invest invest in an area that ticks those 5 boxes. It's a decent area, and it's one that's likely to increase in capital appreciation greater than the average over the 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years to come. And I'm just going to dive into a bit more detail about this. So we need to make sure those 5 areas are here. And this will probably mean that you're looking at buying in a nice area, could be a 3-bed semi, that you could rent out to a family, for 5, 10 years. It doesn't have to be the same family, but you're renting out to a family. And then all of a sudden, they're paying the mortgage, you're making a bit of profit, but really the majority of that wealth you're creating is in the value of that property going up in the long term. Now, where could you actually be buying these types of properties? Well, I'm from Leeds. My business is in Leeds, and we operate mainly in Yorkshire, but North Leeds is a great area for this. North Leeds is a very strong area. Don't get me wrong, you're not going to get great yields, but your capital appreciation over the long term is going to be excellent. So this is an area that I'd consider looking at if if Yorkshire is within your target zone. Okay, I'm going to give you another tip when it comes to the second strategy, the capital growth strategy, is of course we want to make sure the fundamentals are right, but we could actually take a slight more gamble and take slight more risk, embarking on the same strategy but in a different manner. So we could actually be investing in areas that are due for redevelopment. And what I mean by that is this specific area has been marked for regeneration and redevelopment, and there's millions of pounds being pumped into this very small area. Well, we could actually take a punt. We could buy in this area, and hopefully 10 years down the line, when all the developments happened and that very small isolated local economy is hopefully flourishing, then we can take advantage of those higher capital values in the future. So this is a slightly more riskier strategy, and it relies a bit more research and a bit more local know-how, but if you buy in the right areas, you can actually experience huge growth even over a 5-10 year time span. So again, by keeping close to local plans, local directives, and seeing where the UK economy is investing money into certain regions, you could stay one step ahead of the game, start looking in those areas, getting deals agreed in those areas, and seeing what they look like in 5-10 years to come. Okay, so the last strategy, the third strategy I've been speaking about on this channel, is more of an active strategy, and that's where we're trading property. We're maybe buying and selling, or maybe buying at a really good price and financing, something like that. Now, this is a far more active way of making a living through property. And again, we want to be looking in somewhat similar areas to what I've mentioned in our first and second strategy, the income and the capital growth strategy. But we want to address this in a slightly different manner. Now, the way I see it, in my opinion anyway, is when we're trading property, that is, all that we really care about is price. Because, we can buy and sell in a not so good area, but if we're de-risking that investment by buying that property at a really good price, well, that's where the money is made. The money is made in property at the price you purchase that property for. And I'll repeat that again. The money that you'll make in property is about that initial purchase price. If you can get a really good offer accepted, well, first of all, you're de-risking that investment. But second of all, no matter where you are, even if you're then selling it on below the market value, that's a great way to make money. So when we're trading property, we want to be careful about the price we're paying for that property. And, we can be investing in areas that have high yields. That's great. If we're trading property in high yield areas, getting them at a really good price, well, actually, that's far easier to sell on to an investor because, those areas have high yields anyway. So the markup doesn't have to be, it actually can be quite significant to actually pass that on to an investor. So that's a great margin that you can make there. But also, let's take the capital growth example. If you're acquiring properties in good, fundamentally great areas at a really good price, well, they're going to be so much easier to flip. They're going to be so much easier to trade on because these areas are great. People are looking to buy their own homes in those areas, and you can facilitate that and make that happen. So to recap, we've spoken a bit about how to work out where to buy properties depending on the strategies. So I'll just repeat this to summarize. Number one, if you're going for income, you want to be looking at high yield areas. The north of the UK is a great example. If you're embarking upon your capital growth and capital wealth and accumulation journey, you want to be buying in really good fundamental areas that have good schools, low crime, high owner occupiers, good employment nearby, and good transport links. And lastly, if you're trading property and flipping property, well, it doesn't really matter. As long as you're getting it at a good price, which by its very nature de-risks the investment, then that allows sufficient margin for you to exit that deal and make your money. So I really hope you've got value from today's video, and please consider subscribing to the channel. It really does mean a lot to me, and I really want this channel to grow. I'm pumping out some hopefully really good videos. Again, any questions, pop it in the comments. But if you want help figuring out what your strategy is, maybe you're new to property, or actually you've started your property journey and you just need a bit of help fast tracking and understanding what to actually do, feel free to reach out to me. www.ms7.uk. You'll see the link in the description, and I'd love to chat with you. Enjoy your day.